Everybody, this is John Marico from Restoration Homestead, and you are currently meeting me right here in our first vineyard. And just within the last week, we have planted 60 Blanc de Bois wine grape vines, and so far, pretty much all of them are off to a good start budding and putting out some leaves. But since they're first-year vines in the ground, one of the first things you have to do is to prune them back, something that I think a lot of first-time fruit growers, myself included, are pretty nervous about doing. And for the grapevines, it's a pretty heavy pruning, actually. You take it all the way back to just 2 buds. And I'm going to show you how that works here in this video. But I wanted to take just a second to talk a little bit about grapevines and how we planted them. You probably can't see from the camera, but I can put up a picture on this blog post. But we have 6 rows of 10 vines spaced 6 feet apart in the row, and 6 feet apart, 6 feet within the row, and then 6 feet between the rows, if that makes sense. So our little walkway is 6 feet wide in between, whichever way you're walking, basically. And the reason why we did that is, for one thing, I'm experimenting. And for another thing, you got to give the vines some space to spread out. But from talking to the guy who I bought the vines from, he said he spaced his 8 feet apart this direction from each other down the row. And they don't quite get far enough out, and it's not really utilizing the space the best. So 6 feet is a pretty optimal number for these Blanc de Bois grapes. Of course, consult whoever you're buying the vines from to ask and check. Of course, there are lots of online resources too, depending on what kind of grapes you want to grow, to fill you in on the spacing requirements for each variety. But I have the privilege of being able to talk to somebody right here in East Texas about planting vines specifically for the southeast part of the United States. So, okay, with that said, we dug a hole probably about 14 inches deep, 14 inches wide, somewhere in that neighborhood. It was a little bit deeper, a little bit wider than what the roots actually required. And then what we did was we sprinkled a little bit. We kind of, as you're putting the dirt in, you have to kind of break it up so you got nothing but loose dirt, no clods or anything like that, because air around the base of the vine is a really bad thing. Not only is it going to wick the moisture away, but it's also going to promote different kinds of disease growth. So what we did is we crumbled up the dirt, and then we sprinkled about a teaspoon of fish emulsion, which was, I'll put a link to it, but basically it was this little canister from a company called Seagate. And all it is about 16 pounds of dead fish that have been dehydrated and then ground up into a powder. And this stuff is like killer fertilizer, and of course it's all organic and natural too. As I've been informed by every person out here, something apparently I'd never read before, but this is what the Indians actually taught the pilgrims when they first came, is to stick a dead fish over by their cornfield. And it makes a fantastic compost / fertilizer. Anyway, okay, so we did that. We sprinkled that around the roots, and then we continued to put in this loose dirt. We covered it up, made just a small little bit of dirt above the level of the ground. It doesn't have to be a hill or anything. And from there, we have covered around the base of the vines with hay. And this hay is not just stuff that we've picked up and then chopped up from buying a bale, but rather we have set this round bale in our chicken coop. And so for those of you with chickens, you have the amazing privilege of working with some of the finest compost and manure out there, as long as it ages properly. So these chickens are going to scratch through the hay, they're going to eat up the seeds, they're going to eat up anything else that you don't want growing in here, and then they're going to poop in it, and then grind it up. And once it's dried a little bit, it's fantastic as a kind of covering and as a kind of slow fertilizer, because as it rains, it's going to slowly penetrate and bring out phosphates and things like that from the hay or straw and take it down to the roots. It also promotes a lot of microlife, which is something we'll talk about in another video, hopefully. Another thing that's equally important for your vines and for any other kind of growth for that matter. And you can see we've covered most of this area with mulch. We've got a little bit left that needs to be covered with mulch. So this is locking in the moisture, which is fantastic because we just got like 3 inches of rain over about 18 hours the other day. And so we've got all this rainwater that's now locked into the soil. It's drained well. It doesn't leave it muddy out here. And yeah, so the vine should be taken off pretty well. So anyway, let's talk about pruning. Why do you want to prune? Well, pruning is especially important the first year. And a lot of people think, okay, I want a fruit tree. I want something that bears fruit. So let's just do it. Let's stick it in the ground. Let's see if we can get some fruit, which is obviously your end goal, but not your first year goal. Your first year, your goal is establishment, okay? Whether it's grapevines, whether it's other kinds of berry vines or fruit trees, you just name your fruit tree. The first year is about establishment, and you want roots, and you want good trunks and things of that sort. So what happens is as the plants are making their carbs, there's this massive carb rush to the fruit, and not much is being put into stores in the ground or stores in the plant itself above the ground. So you really want to say, look, plant, I know you want it to grow and put off seeds so that you can propagate, but this first year I want you to focus on roots. Okay, so the first year you're cutting back to about 2 buds, maybe 3. The goal there is to get one that's straight and to just keep the other 1 or 2 at bay in case you lose that first shoot. So you've got kind of a backup, essentially. That's with the grapevines. And so we're kind of saying, look, don't worry about growing all this other stuff over here that you've got. Just focus on a couple of shoots and roots, okay? You can fertilize a little bit, like we said. Like I said, we use that fish fertilizer this first year. You don't want to heavily fertilize your grapes in general. Most of your grapevines are going to get most of their fertilization from above the ground. So the hay is important, the mulch is important, any other kind of compost you put on each year, each successive year is going to be very important to keeping those nutrients going from the top down. Because most of the roots looking for nutrients are along the surface, so you're not going to do a lot of digging and then dumping in at the base. The other thing too is that if you put in a lot of compost initially, and this goes for fruit trees too, if you put in a lot of compost initially around that root ball that has formed, you're going to get a lot of tight clusters right there, and the vine isn't going to want to start growing out. And so if you encourage it by just giving it a little bit of fertilizer and not too much real rich composty soil, it'll start spreading out into the native dirt, which is what you want ultimately. So anyway, so let's talk about pruning. Let me get my pruning shears. And I'm just going to take this first one back right here. You can see here at the base, I've got one coming off the bottom and I've got another one coming out the top. Essentially what you're going to look for is something, you're going to look for the one that looks the strongest, okay? And in this case, it's this one coming out of the top. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along with my pruning shears and make sure your pruning shears have a blade. Let me see if I can get this a little bit closer. Make sure they have a blade that kind of meets a little bit to the side of your, they call this the anvil. You don't want it to like smash down on top, otherwise you're going to get crimped cuttings and leave kind of messed up wood that is more likely to harbor disease. You want a nice clean cut. That's really the goal. So anyway, I'm going to come right here along the base and I'm just going to cut that right off. Okay. Now this guy right here is called a cane. Okay. It's dormant wood. Of course, at this point, it started putting off some green shoots, but initially it was just dormant wood, probably about a year old. And what you can do with this, and this is not something that you'll probably hear from your from the guy who sells them to you, because his goal is to sell vines, right? But you can take these and you can propagate more vines from them. And so I'm going to hold on to this guy, and I'm probably going to initially let it try and get these shoots a little bit longer. And this guy will probably root down here at the base. I will show you how to do that in another video. But after these green shoots get a little bit longer, I'll cut those off as well and propagate with those. And you can do probably several thousand cuttings just from one or a few green cuttings at the beginning of the year. And you can have several thousand probably by the end of the year, depending on how you do it. So this is an excellent way. I mean, seriously, if you find some vines that grow well in your area, start propagating them. And then sell them, you know, show it on Craigslist or whatever, and people will come and most guys sell out each year, especially if it's a vine that grows well in that area. Okay, so this one is the strong one. So down here at the base, I'm going to bring the camera a little closer. See if I can get this set up here on the spot. Okay, so down here at the base, you can see a couple of green shoots coming out right here. There's one bud down here at the base, the little, where these two parts V right here. You want to keep that one. It's kind of a backup. So there's one here, there's a second one here, and there's the third one. And because that third one is already looking pretty strong, I'm going to go ahead and do 3 buds on this guy. So I'm going to just cut it right above there. And now it looks like I have nothing but a stick with a leaf sticking out of the ground. But these guys are like gold. These guys can do amazing things, especially the real vigorous vines. So anyway, I'm going to hold on to these and propagate them and show you how to do that in a separate video. We're going to do some other cuttings too from some of our other fruit trees. Anyway, so now this guy is pruned and ready for the season. As you can see too, I don't have my trellises set up yet, mostly because there's nothing really for them to catch. But as these guys get bigger, you're going to start seeing this one come out, that one come out, and this one come out. And like I said, depending on which one is the straightest, perhaps this one, I'm going to encourage that one to grow up a pole. And I will tie it lightly to that pole once it's about 1 foot long, and just keep these guys cut back a little bit so that they just kind of wait in the event that I need them. And once this first guy is established, those will be removed probably next year. So anyway, this guy is now officially pruned. Not too bad, just a few little tips. So good luck with your grapevines, and I'd be interested to hear from other people who have grown grapevines as well. Any tips you have on pruning or what you have found to work in your area. All right, again, this is John.